Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and this video is actually going to be on another set of compilations that I will be reviewing right here on this channel. And I've listened to a few of these a few times. A lot of these I've only listened to once, but I'm going to be reviewing them all right here, right now. So Fat Music was basically a Fat Records version of Epitaph's Punk-O-Rama series, pretty much, where they released a lot of like almost skate punk kind of stuff actually, and ska and hardcore, and even like almost bluegrass type of influenced music. And I think a lot of the bands on this label did it very well actually, some a bit better than others, but there were a lot that definitely shined on this record label, like No Use for a Name, Lagwagon, Propagandy, and of course NoFX. And there are bands from those bands right there, which were honestly probably the most known bands on the label. To even bands like Diesel Boy and High Standard was actually kind of more known. There were many others that were on this that weren't as widely known, like Tilt. That was a band that wasn't really known as much. But there was many bands in the skate punk genre actually that were on this, and those were honestly I think my favorite out of all of them. Including later on in the series they had bands like Teenage Bottle Rocket and Masked Intruder. But we're gonna start with the first one here. So the first one that they ever made was Fat Music for Fat People, and this one had all the original bands that were signed to the record label, including Propagandy, Lagwagon, No Use for a Name, Mad Caddies. I thought this was honestly one of the best compilations out of them all, honestly, and for many reasons. There's a lot of skate punk on this, which of course I'm heavily into myself, and there's Anti-Manifesto by Propagandy, which starts it off, which what better way to start off a compilation like this with Propagandy's Anti-Manifesto. So, and there's a lot of like what we know and love skate punk on this album for sure, and I thought this definitely was a good example of what the record label really is, and gave a good taste of what this record label is really like and what these compilations are like and everything. And this was actually one of the shorter compilations, believe it or not, out of all of them that they've released. And there's another one called 100 and 130 songs, short songs for short people, which actually is a longer one because due to the fact that it has literally 101 songs on it, believe it or not. But yeah, this is actually I think the shortest one out of them all, I'm pretty sure, but definitely did do good in the time it served on the record. So the next one's actually Survival of the Fattest. Now this album was kind of like the first album. They started to experiment a little more, I could tell, and try to get more of a variety of bands in, with bands like Weezo on this. But this was actually a lot like the first release of Fat Music for sure. There are many bands, of course, like High Standard on here, No Use for a Name, Snuff, Good Riddance, and a lot of songs on here that became more popular, like Justified Black Eye by No Use for a Name. And there was actually one called Nation States by Propagandy, which became kind of known after a while for sure. And Propagandy became a lot more known as time went on for sure. Actually, they weren't that big of a band at first, but they're definitely more known today than they used to be for sure, especially with their most recent album Victory Lap, which I'm pretty sure was released on Fat Records as well. But Propagandy has been both an Epitaph and a Fat Records band, and I think both waves of the band have actually been really good. So honestly, this part of the compilation was pretty average for me. Definitely pretty good, you know, about average though for me, not the greatest out of them all. The first one I think is a little better actually, but there's still many great songs in this album, like Sleep and Nation States and many others on here. So the third one's called Physical Fatness. So this one had a couple more bands that started to become a little more known. There's Screeching Weasel on here, and they had one of the most popular songs on here called Cool Kids, and this is on Bark Like a Dog originally, and of course that's probably one of their most popular albums that they've released, and the first one I think that they've actually released on Fat Records, which kind of showed that this actually kind of helped Screeching Weasel in a way. I don't think their relations between Fat Records and Screeching Weasel are that good anymore. For whatever reason, I'm not really sure and don't really care much, but this is definitely a great song, and I think Fat Records did a really good job producing this album and the album that followed, and those albums are definitely my favorite albums of all time by Screeching Weasel, and I'm glad that that song was actually included on here, because that song I think was very important for this record label. There's also a few funny joke songs on here, like Arsehole by Snuff or All of Me by NoFX. Most bands on here still give off that skate punk vibe though, and I think this album had it's funny moments, and you know, it's moments where it could definitely be a good jam for sure too. Like for example, Strung Out being on here, which honestly is a great band to even headbang to at times. So the next one is Life in the Fat Lane. Now this one I think was definitely one of the more important releases in the series, and this one had many known songs on it on the record label, like May 16. There's even Dummy Up by Screeching Weasel, which I think is an absolutely great song, even though it's only like a minute song, a little over a minute, but it's definitely a very melodic song. And May 16 as well is definitely a very melodic funk song. And there's Coming Too Close by No Use for a Name, which is also a very great melodic song, and I think No Use for a Name has always been good at those for sure. And they played this at Warped Tour quite a few times as well, and I thought they did a very good performance on it when they were on Warped Tour. And there's some hardcore bands on here too, like Sick of It All, which is another very good hardcore band. Definitely recommend them. And there's of course a lot of other, you know, bands that have been on Fat Records before. There's also the Ataris though, which actually did a record on Fat Records, and there's actually a song on here from the Ataris, which actually kind of surprised me. You know, I never knew that the Ataris were actually signed to Fat Records even, you know, until I listened to this record. And I think this was the very moment where they started to add more onto the record label though, like a different variety of genres for sure. You know, they had hardcore, they had more skate punk kind of stuff, and they of course even had ska on here a little bit, which Mad Caddies is definitely known for quite a bit. So, and the next one's called Live Fat Die Young. Now this one is definitely one of the better ones too, I think, out of it. I think this was honestly one of the golden days for sure of this these set of compilations, along with the first one. This is where they really started making a comeback here, and there's many great bands on here. No Use for a Name, Anti-Flag, Mad Caddies, Strung Out, and so many others that I'm just a massive fan of for sure. You know, whether it be in the skate punk genre or, you know, the ska genre or whatever, you know, there's a lot of good of everything in this album for sure. There's even bands like Good Riddance, which is kind of more of a hardcore type of band. And Good Riddance, let me mention, they have great lyrics in their songs and are very good songwriters for sure, and I definitely recommend them if you're looking for a hardcore band that's definitely a bit more, you know, lyrical than a lot of the other ones. So around this time, the late 90s as well, the compilations started to get a little longer, you know, because people were moving more towards CD, because this was like the late 90s and early 2000s when records were starting to become longer and everything, and we didn't need, like, you know, a second side like a record did back in the day after just maybe like 10 minutes. But this is when they started to get longer. There's, as I think, 19 songs on this, I'm pretty sure. The first one, of course, I think had around 14 and was definitely a shorter one, but these just definitely started to get longer around this time. And I think that was, in a way, kind of a good thing, though, to show more of the great songs that they have done over the years on this label, and great bands that they've signed, some of the greatest bands of all time in the punk rock genre, in my opinion. Man, this was definitely a solid release for me, you know, and this is one of my favorite ones of all time, and I definitely recommend this one as well for anyone really wanting to get into these compilations more. So, and Uncontrollable Fatulence, which is the next one, is also a pretty solid one, honestly. There's a lot of similar bands that there were on the last release, because it was only a year later, of course, that they actually put this one out. And there's, of course, many bands like they were on the last one, like Anti-Flag, No Effects, of course, Mad Caddies, and Dillinger 4 and Rise Against are also on here, by the way, along with the last one. And I thought those bands definitely made this compilation better. And, you know, of course, more people probably started to listen to these compilations because Rise Against was out and because they're a more known band. But I think they definitely do some great material either way, and I'm glad they made an appearance on this album for sure. And I think they definitely made the album better. But there's lots of, you know, bands that they've had signed ever since the beginning on this, like No Effects, of course, Lagwagon, No Use for a Name, and Propagandy, which I think are almost on every one of them, which I think is a good thing, because those bands definitely stick out for sure, more than almost any other in this whole record label. So after Uncontrollable Fatulence, they took a break from making these compilations for sure. I imagine probably because, you know, anyone can make a playlist, like I saw, and I think a video that I've seen recently, I can't remember the name of it, but if I remember it, I'll probably show you guys in the comments, or the description on this video. And they started making them again in 2010, and this gave them a lot of time to release a lot of new bands on the record label, release new records and all of that. And there was definitely more of a variety of stuff in this album for sure. And you can see that because there's Old Man Markley on here, there was Poor Habit, there's even a few acoustic songs on here by there's one acoustic song in here by Tony Sly, which I think is very good. I think Tony Sly is a very good acoustic artist as well. And the Real Mackenzies were also on here, which are kind of more of a Celtic punk band, which I've been getting kind of more into lately because I've been listening to Dropkick Murphys more, and bands like that, Flogging Molly, which I think are very good bands for sure. Dropkick Murphys honestly is probably my favorite one, but the Real Mackenzies are also a great one as well. And Banner Pilot I want to mention as well, because this band is incredibly underrated in my opinion, an incredibly underrated melodic punk band which I think deserves more attention and praise for sure for what they've come out with. I actually do have a record by them called Heartbeat Specific, which I think is a great one. They actually had a song, it wasn't from that album on here, but it was from an album I believe before that they have released, and I think pretty much every Banner Pilot song I've heard is, you know, at least decent, you know what I mean? And they're relatively new. I mean, I think they've been around since like the late 2000s, maybe early 2010s, I'm not exactly sure. But for what they put out, I think it definitely does add to the genre, and I definitely chill these guys probably if I had the chance, you know, and they seem like really chill guys, you know, and I think they'd be really cool to play music with as well, because I play a lot of similar stuff that they do, and I'm into kind of the same stuff they are, so I mean, you know, they'd probably be pretty cool guys to hang around, I imagine. So there's also a track by Against Me in here, and I'm a big fan of Against Me as well. I think they're a very talented band and very good at what they do. They have a very unique form of music that they do for sure, unlike any other I've ever heard, and I'm a big fan of them because of that, because I think they do it very well. And I'm glad Against Me got signed to Fat Records kind of, and they released some great material while they were on there for sure that I think definitely deserves to be noted. So the most recent one that they come out with, actually, I think actually there's one after this. There was an acoustic one, but this was the one that was released in 2015. It's called Going Nowhere Fat, and this one was definitely a longer one for sure. There's actually 25 songs on this album. I mean, it was released in 2015, so of course it's gonna be a little longer than something made in like 1984, but this definitely has a lot of great material on it for sure. There's Banner Pilot on it, there's Masked Intruder on it, there's even CJ Ramon on it. He actually does a song on here called One More Chance, which I think is a very good song, and I definitely enjoy CJ Ramon as a solo artist for two, I will admit, and I think he's incredibly underrated as a solo artist, honestly. So there's many great bands on this album. There's even Leftover Crack on here, which is I think a pretty strange band in my opinion, but they definitely released some good material. The Lie of a Love, Luck is actually one of my favorite Leftover Crack songs because of this compilation, and I'm glad I got the chance to listen to it, and it's honestly made me get into the band a little more, for sure. So there's many bands that have been on here since the beginning, along with many that have been added on. And I feel like, you know, this was just all the original bands on here with more recent ones added on, like Masked Intruder as well, which I thought was definitely a very good thing, you know. So we're gonna go on to another one called Short Music for Short People. Now this had 101 songs on it, literally. 101 songs, all over like 30 seconds. Some of them were joke songs, some of them were just, you know, songs that were supposed to be more full-length songs but weren't. You name it, it's on here. There's Green Day on here even. There's Blink-182 that does a song on here. There's pretty much almost every band related to this record label, or, you know, influenced by this record label that you can imagine on here that makes an appearance. And honestly, some of these songs are the best 30-second songs that I've ever heard, honestly. You know, I know that's kind of weird to say, you know, that 30-second songs can be that good, but there's a few that actually are, you know. I really enjoyed the Green Day song that was 30 seconds on this album. I've really enjoyed NoFX's 30-second song in this album and many others on here, and honestly I think this is a pretty decent addition for the series, whether it be to joke around or whatever, or just be themselves writing 30-second songs sometimes or whatever, you know. And I think this is definitely a great addition to the series, and I think it doesn't get enough appreciation as what it should, you know. And I'm glad they released this because I've discovered, you know, many things I probably would have never discovered because of this one as well. Some of the best 30-second songs I've ever heard, so I mean, this definitely added something good to the series for sure, and definitely deserves more praise. And the most recent addition in the series is actually an acoustic one. This one had many great songs on it, including Tony Sly and Joey Cape acoustic songs, which I think a lot of these bands could do a great acoustic songs as well, and definitely be great musicians at doing them for sure. And Joey Cape and Tony Sly are very good examples. Of course, Tony Sly is no longer around because he passed away around 8 years ago, but he actually recorded a split album with Joey Cape, and it actually turned out very well. You know, they did acoustic songs together of their own songs, so their most popular songs, like Violins is a very good one. There's International U-Day, which Tony Sly does on acoustic, and many other just great songs that they have done, honestly. And I think this kind of proved that, you know, punk bands can do great acoustic songs, along with another compilation called Punk Goes Acoustic, which I think is actually a pretty good one out of the series. And I think this is the one that proved even more that punk bands can do really cool acoustic songs, you know. And so that is it for this review of all the Fat compilations. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll probably start sharing these more on communities and, you know, other social media sites to get these more known and get people to maybe find out some stuff they haven't or whatever, you know. So that's it for this video, and I will see you guys later. Peace.